Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are, and welcome to this edition of the Tuesday Telecast from the Joyful Path. Today, I am having a true miracle of a healed and healing person who is on the Joyful Path, and she is no other than Maria Garcia. Maria has had a past that is, we're going to let her explain it herself. It's one of those things where life suddenly changed in a really, really specific way, and how that change came to bring her on a journey of really more than a couple of decades, or more than a decade, and you will be really surprised to hear her story. So let's go and see about Maria and see if she's out there. So let's bring her into the house. Hi, Maria. Welcome to the Joyful Path and the Tuesday Telecast.
Hey, Lydia. How are you? And thanks for having me.
Yeah, I'm actually really excited to have you on here. So have um you have kind of a perfect story of finding your way to the joyful path. And I think that it's you understand that it's not a destination, it's a path, and it's a journey. And so I would love to have you talk about you and tell us about um how your life changed for the better and what it took to get on that path.
You're right. Life is definitely a joyful path. It's something like this. It's definitely not linear. And I'll start out with my 20s. I was in my 20s and I'd gone to college for finance. Everything was going well. I'd gotten a job with a good company. And within 6 months, suddenly one day, after lunch, I start getting sick. I was on the phone and I started saying things that I couldn't control. And I was saying things like, the red ocean is underneath the kitchen floor. And then I stopped and I was like, did that come out of my mouth? I couldn't believe what I was saying because it made no sense and it wasn't what I was intending on saying. So I managed to get off the phone, and a little while later, I ended up at the hospital. And after some tests, they finally come to me. They say, Miss, we think you're having a stroke. And I thought, okay, so much for the food poisoning I thought I had. But then my second thought was, what's a stroke? I was 25 years old. I had never even heard of the word.
Yeah.
And within 24 hours, I had been transferred hospitals, and I was now paralyzed from here down. So I was mute and paralyzed. They even thought I was in a coma. They didn't realize I was conscious for the first 2 weeks.
Yeah.
So that was the beginning of a very, very long journey.
Yes. Yes. One of our foremost ways of connecting as humans is to communicate. And when you've just been through school, when all your communication is about verbalization and writing and movement, to suddenly not have that and to be in that vulnerable state, how did you get to a place where you could affect what was going on with you, so that you could communicate with people, so that you could somehow, so that they even knew that you were conscious? What was that period of time like for you?
Oh, it was a horror. It was a terror because I had no way of saying, listen, I can hear you, I can see you, I know what's going on. I had no way of indicating that.
Yeah.
And finally, one day after 2 weeks, a friend of mine came in with pictures of a trip we've taken together. And she showed me the pictures and talking to me, not realizing I'm there, but then noticing through the way I was moving my eyes that,
Mm-hmm.
oh my God, I think this girl understands what I'm saying. So she went and alerted everyone. And from there, we devised a way to communicate by blinking once for yes and twice for no. And then eventually, when I began to move my right index finger about half a centimeter up, then we thought of a different way using the alphabet to spell letters, and I would land on the letter with my movement. But yeah, that was so time consuming,
Yeah. Yeah.
but it was better than not communicating.
Absolutely. Yeah. Wow. When we can't communicate and then somebody finally understands, advocates for us, and makes a change for the better, the amount of difference it can make in our lives is huge. It's just enormous. There's somebody just talking to you in a normal day, people take that for granted, but it's a whole different level that involves a lot of energy, and because there's so much focus on us by somebody who really cares.
Mhm.
It's just amazing. So going forward, how long did it take for you to get back your movement and your speech in phases?
Everything was really, really gradual. First, I began moving my right arm, then my right leg, and then generally the right side. The left side came later. By the time I went home, 4 months later, I had been to a rehab hospital as well as a regular hospital.
Yeah.
And I thought to myself, man, I'm going to go to the rehab hospital. They're going to patch me right up, and I'm going to go home perfectly fine. Well, as you can imagine, that could not be further from the truth. And when I went home in a wheelchair. And so the first thing I realized was, wow, my wheelchair doesn't fit through any of my doorways. And that's when yeah, that's when I graduated to using a walker at home at least,
Yeah.
because I had no other choice.
Yeah. Which is probably better for you anyway.
Probably. I mean, in hindsight, yes, but looking at it back then, it was like, okay, another obstacle. Okay.
Right, right, right. You're just in the mode of, when you're in the mode of surviving, having the turning on the innovation is a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so
So, yeah,
I
yeah.
went through all that and I got home in the wheelchair. I had therapy at home. I had to wear diapers at 25 years old. That was a very, very bitter pill to swallow.
Mhm.
Um, my eyes were crossed because all the muscles in my face on the left side were weakened. So I looked like an alien, sort of. I mean, I looked a lot worse than I was mentally. Mentally, I was fine, but on the
Yeah.
outside, it looked like I wasn't fine. And I
Mhm.
remember my brother wheeling me down the street and seeing pity in people's faces.
So your brother, how much was he around to help you?
A lot. If it weren't for my family, I would not have come as far as I have. I
Mm.
mean, my brother and my parents, they created shifts so somebody would be with me at the hospital 24 hours a day.
Mm.
I remember my mom was with me. She took that night shift, and I'd been brought down from the ICU down to a regular room, and they had taken the ventilator tube out of my mouth. So I was
Mm.
starting to breathe on my own.
Mm.
But that night I woke up gasping for air, and all of a sudden I see commotion around me. My mom's alerting, and I was taken to the ICU for an emergency tracheotomy. And I know that if my mom had not been there, I wouldn't be alive because nobody would have gotten to me in time. And that was just my mom. Then my brother was also with me 1/3 of the day. And he moved my limbs up, down, all around. And this all while I wasn't getting any therapy. And I think that's the reason I have all my movement today. And even after I got home, he would come over every day and he'd have me doing exercise, doing lunges. And
Yeah. Yeah. Thank goodness for that. I I have a feeling that whatever we need when we are really determined to live, whether that's, that we have some great love of life, or whether there's just something else that makes us keep going, that we will it'll happen no matter what, and we'll bring what we need to ourselves.
that's true. And I think that at that point in my life, what was driving me was I'm 25 years old and I cannot live another 60 years or 50 or whatever it is like this. But basically, I'd lost all hope. It was my family that kept it alive.
Yeah. Yeah. So in order to get to the other side of a tragedy, a loss, um, pain, I feel like we have to go through that wall of fire of the tragedy, the loss, the pain. Um, how how do you relate to that?
Oh, absolutely. That is so true. And now I'm happy I'm alive and I'm happy to be here. But it wasn't always like this. I was stuck in victim mode for a long, long time. Like, why me? Why this?
Yeah.
Why did I live? Why did I live? That was my big question. And I'm
Yeah.
not like that now anymore. And now I'm past that, but that lasted years.
Yeah. And I think um that is kind of part of the human condition for a lot of people. Oh, this this isn't good enough, this isn't easy, this in fact is really awful. Why am I alive? I think this is important for people. It's not an easy place to be, and not everybody makes it through it, whatever it is, whether it's depression or it's loss or it's an accident or disease, it war, all these things. Why go on?
Yeah.
And indeed, the point of life is not to just, be survive, to just sit there being. So did you find an answer to your question? Why why me? Why am I here?
Yes, I believe I did. I believe I did after many, many years. And I do have to say one thing. The black cloud started lifting when I began doing yoga. That's not my purpose, right? It doesn't involve yoga, but I just want to say that to anybody who's having a really challenging mental time. Yoga helped me so much in my mentality. I mean, not only is it a physical exercise, I was doing it because it was easy to modify poses and it was, something I could handle. But then I realized, holy wow, I'm no longer, I'm thinking differently. I'm now thinking differently. And it was all because of yoga
Yeah,
that things started opening up.
as you say, the you can modify the poses, you can make them doable and easy, and that's I think there's something important in that, because when we embrace something like yoga for whatever reason we do, if we've been living in our brain, which is really understandable for you, because for a while that's all that worked, and it was something that you could trust. But to integrate, the brain isn't meant to live by itself. The mind and the body, the soul, it all comes together. And to do that for ourselves means actually tying into the body, to actually really paying attention to it and caring for it. And that gets us out of that pity. But we don't know it's going to. There must be some part of us that says, I need to integrate my everything in me. Do you think you were conscious that you needed to do that, or that it was just that little part of you that made you do it?
Oh, absolutely. I was not conscious of it. It was more like I'm doing this because it's the only exercise that I can do that's I'm not gonna fall over. So,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. uh so the the that darkness for anyone, that pain, that of whatever kind it is, if we move in some way, and if we can't move, if someone would only just tell us to really concentrate on our breath, or on the bottoms of our feet, even if they're on a hospital bed, do we feel anything there? If we don't, then try to feel try to count your toes. You try to find it. And the more we find our body, the more we can heal ourselves. So you ended up later really going into how to how to take care of your body. And I'd love to hear about that transition and what you discovered.
Okay. So I was at about 10 years recovered, maybe a little before. I reached the recovery plateau at about 70% of what I used to be.
Mhm.
And I was like that for a long time. So I thought, okay, this is my life. Not ideal, but a whole lot better than where I was. And I guess I'll just live it as best as I can. And that's what I was doing. I had gone back to school. I had taken translation. I was now working at a friend's real estate company. And then one day I saw an ad for a course on nutrition. And I thought to myself, oh, that sounds really cool. That was my first thought. My second thought was, but I don't need this because I already eat really healthy. I'm already a vegetarian. I work out, modified, but I work out. I did not think anything in me would or could change. I didn't really think I needed it. But something inside me nudged me forward, and I enrolled in the course, and I rationalized it by saying, okay, I'm just going to learn something new about a topic I already like, which is nutrition. Because I'd been playing with my diet for years. I'd stopped eating meat. I'd gone to pescatarian. And right when I began the program, I had been a vegetarian for about a year. So I enrolled in the program. And during the program, I heard a lot of things that were contrary to what common knowledge says and to what most people believe. And I was like, that's very interesting. And I just followed the program and I trusted the process. And I tell you, within 6 months, Lydia, I recovered another 20%, 15 years after the stroke. And I got my life back. And I could not believe it. My mind went, oh, how can this be? What is the sorcery by which this
Yeah.
happens?
Yeah. Wow. So what was the sorcery?
What is the sorcery? So I enrolled just to peek under the hood because I had to know what was going on. And there is no sorcery. That's the magic of it. There's no sorcery. The body is self-healing.
Mhm.
You might have known that. Most people assume that we're diseased. We're not. We're really not. The more I go down the rabbit hole, the more I realize that most of the issues that we have in the world today, as far as illness, I'm going to be conservative and say about 80% could be eradicated if people ate what they were designed to eat. Think of it like this. If you go to the zoo, they tell you don't feed the animals because the animals get sick with whatever we're feeding them. That's because what we're feeding them is not part of their natural diet.
Right.
So it gets sick. So humans also have a diet by which we thrive and our own self-healing gets unlocked.
Mhm. Yeah. So going back to the beginning, which you may or may not be able to answer to, was it your diet that caused the issue in the first place, do you think?
Oh, that's a very interesting question. Do I think that caused me? I think partly yes. I think partly was also childhood traumas. It all layers upon each other. But I
Yeah.
do believe that my
Yeah.
diet played a big role because I was not getting the things I needed for my body to function properly.
Right. Right. Um, So, because what I hear in the statement that conservatively 80% of our diseases could be taken care of by eating what we are designed to eat. And I take that as, partially from my own bias toward this belief, but that that is what we individually should eat. Some of us don't have the same nutritional needs as others based on what might be our, if we have a wildly different ethnicity than somebody else, then we may have some foods that are very different in the way we function best. But so that is unique and on a spectrum, but mostly there that our nutrition can fit into human need, and that will change us. And if we don't, in that statement, it's saying that if we don't have that nutrition, that we're going to suffer.
We are suffering. I mean, look at the current state of the world.
Yeah.
People are getting sicker and sicker,
Yeah.
although there's more and more technology, but
Yeah.
people are still falling more ill, more depressed than ever.
Yeah.
So it's not the technology. What's changed? The way we eat.
Yeah. Yeah. um I believe what has changed for a lot of us is also our connection to the earth, but I think that's the same thing, because when we were connected to the earth, we ate what the earth provided, and we also intuitively, we were really connected to our intuition. We intuitively knew what not to eat. So if we're not connected to the earth anymore because we're living in high rises and we always have been, or we don't go outside, we live in our computers and our phones, or whatever the reason, we've been conditioned to live in a commercial world, and we just eat the stuff that is provided by fast food restaurants and malls, then we're not connected to the earth. We're not connected to what we need, and so the nutrition goes kaput.
I agree with you. I agree with you 100%.
So how, as you look at the the course of your life, what's the is there a bright side? Is there something that was meant, that you were meant to have happen, that made you go through this, or that you took away from this experience?
Yeah, looking back on it now, I definitely think that this put me on a path. And not only did it put me on a path, but I remember this one time I went to this woman's house. She was a Hindu, and she said to me, "Would you like me to do a reading for you?" And I thought to myself, okay, let's do a reading. And she begins by telling me, "You had some type of brain accident." And I'm thinking to myself, I'm like, okay, that doesn't take a genius to figure that out, but okay. And then she followed that by saying, "And I could see you have metal piece in your brain." And then that's when I stopped and I was like, now I'm paying attention. Because nobody would know that I have a stent unless I told you. And so the following phrase she said was, "And the Swami says that this happened to you to prevent you from going down a worse path." Because I was going down the road of drinking too much, partying,
Yeah.
and it was starting to get out of hand. It really was.
Yeah. Wow. And obviously, there was reason for you to keep learning in this lifetime. Whatever one believes out there, that you could have just gone down that path and not been around anymore. You could have
Yeah.
gone down this path and not been around anymore. But everything has brought you to being around, and not just being around, but doing a lot better in your life than before. So now this is where you've lifted yourself, and you had to, and you got help along the way for sure, but you were in that situation. You lifted yourself, and you continue to lift yourself, and you've continued to heal yourself, and say, oh, I am responsible for this. I get it now. And now you're able to lift others. So how do you do that?
So when I said I wanted to be under the hood, that's when I enrolled to become a coach. And I went through the certification. It was a couple of months. And then they told us, well, now in order to get your certificate, you have to have a pilot class. And I was like, what? So I gathered people and I picked a date, but I did not think that I would be able to do this because never have I liked public speaking. That's number one. Never have I been an entrepreneur. Number two. And my confidence in myself took a hit, to put it mildly, right?
Yeah.
And when the first day of the first class came, I had a mini breakdown. I was in tears. I was like, I can't do this. But finally, a couple of friends talked me down, and I ended up going through the class successfully. And to date, I've had hundreds of Zoom classes, and my clients have had such wild successes as well. I mean, I have an extraordinary story. So, but everybody has their own extraordinary story because everybody's story is extraordinary to them in different ways, right? And one of the clients that sticks out is an 86-year-old woman who had been injecting insulin 10 years. I think of something like 53 units. After about 8 or 10 weeks, she stopped injecting insulin. And her family called me, said she's so much nicer. She's more mellow. She's not frustrated anymore. It was amazing.
So beautiful. And such a gift. When we've been fixing ourselves, either self-medicating with food, with alcohol, with whatever else, or we're medicating by what the pharmaceutical industry has said will help us, which is a chemical response, but we don't think about the fact that um, our emotions are a chemical response. They cause chemical reactions inside of us that will actually bring us disease from the stress. So if we don't take care of the outer and internal stresses, then we will continue to stress our body and bring ourselves harm. And that our food is a chemical response that either gives or takes energy from us. And
Yeah.
it, even if the interesting thing about that is, I think that for a lot of people, even if they don't know the foods that they should be having or the things that they could be doing, because they haven't tapped into themselves, they haven't they don't have that ability. It's pretty logical that when that idea is brought to you that, oh, if I cause myself less stress, or if things around me cause me less stress, if I put myself in a place that's not as stressful, and if I put myself in a place where I can eat the right things, I'm going to be healthier. It's just it's logical, it feels right. So how do people learn what to eat right, and how to put themselves in that place where they can take care of themselves better when they know they need to, but they don't know how?
That's not so simple, right? Not so
Yeah.
easy, because I think we don't realize the magnitude of or the impact that food has on us
Yeah.
until we do something like radical, or we make a radical shift. Then we realize, oh wow, my symptoms are being caused by that. And a lot of the food out there and the food marketing industry is doing such a number on us. They're keeping us addicted with addictive chemicals in the food, first of all. And people have to realize, it's not your fault. Whatever's going on with you, it's not your fault. But now that you know that, it's your responsibility to make a better life for yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. And if there seems like doubt in that, because we grow up with whatever food we grow up with, and unlike what we were saying before, when being part of nature, we ate from what was around us. When we're kids and we grow up in suburbia, or in a city, or even in a village that's, or a small town that's far away, and our food is shipped into us, and we get what we get, and that's what we eat from, just like when we ate from nature. We eat from that stuff, and to put that idea in that it's our responsibility to choose better. Luckily we can now, because most places ship in a lot of different kinds of food, but that means you really have to make some choices that make no sense whatsoever. So having people go through your program and actually get off of insulin, get
Yeah.
that makes I think that makes me, or anyone else say, I'll have what she had.
Yeah, it was amazing. It was amazing. And I think part of the issue today is we want convenience. But convenience, at the end of the day, convenience kills. I always say that's not a pleasant thing to say, convenience kills. But at the end of the day, it really can.
That means convenience isn't convenient, is it? It's not very convenient to suffer and die.
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
really. Um, Meaning that something isn't truthful somewhere. If we are thinking something's convenient and it's not, or someone's telling us something's convenient and it's not.
Right.
Where do you think we missed the boat on that one?
Probably all the way back, starting in the 50s, with the
Yeah,
advent of processed foods.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And maybe just yeah, I'd go so far as to say the the industrial era in general, we started all being trained for industry and working for industry, and bowing to industry, and so industry started even back then dictating what we were eating, and it might not have had quite as much in it, but it was when we started following a path that wasn't the path that we were following before.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, yeah, what
But
what's what's that?
I was going to say that it's interesting that I had to go through this path of just losing everything. I lost everything at 25 years old. So I could discover this one thing that would have made a world of difference had I known it back then. Because had I known this, what I know now regarding food and regarding our nutrition, had I known that then, maybe number one, I wouldn't have had the stroke. But if I did, I could have recovered much quicker and probably even better. I wouldn't have had to suffer 10 years.
Yeah,
But that's all part of my path. That's all part of my path to say to others, hey, don't do what I did.
right. Yeah. If some of us can go through and then be of be of service and help others, and they're helped and they don't have to suffer. Like, and maybe, some of them have been suffering for a long time, so we actually come along and we help with that suffering. That's that's a purpose and a life that ends up being really beautiful. And it doesn't mean it doesn't have ups and downs, but the overall path is just lovely and a whole lot more joyful than before.
Yeah, and I love that, the path of surviving to thriving.
Yeah. Yeah. So what's the best thing that you do now? If you can name one, and if you change your mind and think of something else after, but what's the best thing that you can do now that you weren't able to do 10 years ago?
Hmm. I probably socialize a lot more.
Hmm.
I'm not constantly the same, wondering, are they going to think something is wrong with me? And feeling worthless.
Mm. Yeah. Wow. And that's something that really would bring joy into our lives. I've had a similar thing where I didn't believe that. Well, I was like, I couldn't talk, and then when I could, I wasn't saying, I didn't have any words and I wasn't saying the right things. And eventually being able to talk again, I thought, well, this is much better. But I didn't think that I talked well enough for anybody to want to listen to me, because it was slow um and but my brain was working. I just couldn't communicate. The more I thought that I couldn't communicate, um I didn't communicate as well. And then when I started to just say, I don't care anymore, I'm going to communicate the best I can, and started to communicate people, but still with that belief that I was, nothing to write home about it with speech, but that I worked on it. And it was, good. I started getting people saying, I love your voice. I love the pace of your voice, and I love it. I love the soothing abilities it has with me. And I suddenly thought, oh my goodness, somebody loves my voice. And then
You
we
know
can
what?
use our voice to help others.
You know what? You're describing my life exactly, Lydia. I
Yeah.
went through exactly the same thing. And one day I was at a store and I was looking at a papaya, picking one, and I could see out of the corner of my eye a gentleman looking my way, and I'm not thinking anything, and all of a sudden he walks over and he says, how do you pick out a papaya? So I start telling him, and he stops me and he goes, "Oh, ma'am, are you sick?" And I knew he meant my voice. And I looked at him sweetly and I said, "No, my voice is just that sexy." And we both had a laugh, and that was it.
That's awesome. That's incredible.
That's the power of self-acceptance.
Yeah, yeah. Just go out and do it. Because in the end of the day, if our ego is holding us back from having what we want, and when really, if we're honest with ourselves, we know that people aren't coming out into the store or to talk with us for any other reason than that they want to talk to us. If they talk to us, if they're there, they're not coming to judge us. There's nobody's coming to judge us. We're not that important. So if they want to talk to us, they're talking to us. They could be doing something else. They could be going and buying the bananas. They could be going and walking their dog. They could watch a television show. They don't have to talk to us.
Yeah. But in our heads, we're the most important
Right.
thing in the world. We're everything. And
Right.
then you realize, well, everybody's the main character in their own movie. They're not
Right.
worried about what you're doing.
No, as long as what you're doing isn't making their life worse, isn't.
Yeah.
So um that's, yeah, it's an interesting thing not having a voice. And certainly it's the rest of it all, right? I mean, that we take as being the most important thing that we healed from, getting our body going again, getting our being able to have movement. And but in the end of the day, no, our voice is no less important. It is something that we value in ourselves, because kind of like right at the beginning of this whole discussion, you don't want to be stuck after communicating your whole life without being able to communicate.
Mhm.
If you'd been communicating telepathically your whole life, you'd have no problem with that, right? But
Right.
nobody's prepared to do that. And if you suddenly can't write and you can't move and you can't speak and you can't, how do you communicate?
Yeah.
We like to communicate. Humans like to communicate. Even if you're an introvert, it which I am, but it doesn't mean I don't like people. It just means I need downtime.
Yeah.
We
Even introverts can communicate through writing journals to themselves. It doesn't,
Yeah,
even that's a communication. But you and I, we both lost all communication.
yeah,
No ability to write or speak or anything.
yeah, yeah. So it makes a huge difference to be able to communicate. And I think for me, it's one of the places where gratitude has come into my life the most, is just gratitude for my own voice, however it wants to respond in a given day.
Um, it's funny you say that because I have friends, a specific friend, and she says, "Oh, you could see this person and your voice would probably get better." And I'm thinking to myself, I don't mind that my voice is the way it is. I think it gives me character. I think it's a reminder of where it was, and it doesn't bother me.
No. And I think it's odd to think that it would be a flaw, as opposed voices are across the board. And it's a spectrum. And I think that we compare, and other people compare to what we were. And it doesn't mean that what we were was better. It's the way you communicate. You, Maria, the way you communicate is so powerful. It's amazing. And because you can communicate, you are changing people's lives.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's so gratifying to have found the thing, because oftentimes you think, oh, what's my purpose? And we kind of just go through the motions. But now I feel a drive. I feel a drive to get this out there and tell people, hey, listen, we don't have to suffer the way we are. Things will be so much better if we just do this and change this.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. If you were to tell somebody, to tell this audience what they could do right now to make themselves healthier, just as a start, what would you tell them?
And I think I'll give you two things. The number one thing I believe is water, drinking water. We don't drink enough. We're chronically dehydrated and don't even realize. And so it might seem a little challenging at first. And when I was asked to drink more water, I was like, no, I'm not thirsty and blah, blah, blah. And I had all these reasons why I didn't want to drink all that water. And when I finally did, 3 days later, I felt so much more energy. So much more energy.
Yeah, yes.
So I think that's one of the fundamentals is hydration, water.
Cheers.
Here's and then another big thing would be get outside if you can. Even if it's just 5 minutes a day, 10, go for a walk, just get some fresh air.
Yeah, yeah. It makes those two things have so much to do with energy. And we convince ourselves that we don't have the energy to do it, to go outside or to drink the water because it tastes plain. And I love water. It it feels fresh and like my body, what my body needs to. And it doesn't get boring. It continues to feel like exactly what my body needs. We have to get to that point where you actually appreciate it. And
And you
then,
could make it easy on yourself. Maybe sip through a straw. Make sure you always have water available. That makes it easier.
yeah, yes, absolutely.
Set a timer.
I often have a pitcher if I'm going to be someplace for a long time, so I can keep refilling my glass, or having um for some people a thermos or a water bottle would make a difference. I think the pitcher for me was just easier to pour, and I didn't have to open anything, and I could see it.
Yeah, you want to make it as easy for yourself as humanly possible.
Yeah, yeah. And that doesn't mean that what your sisters or your friends solution to it is going to necessarily work for you, because a lot of
Right.
people do really well with a thermos. And but if I'm at a desk or something, then I'm going to tend to ignore the thermos more than I'm going to ignore the glass of water and the pitcher to fill it. So that's just
And
my
that's
solution.
yeah, that's what you're looking for, whatever works for you.
Yeah, yeah,
Whatever works best for you.
yeah. Amazing. Um, all right. So Your website is genuinelymaria.com, and that is genuinely spelled in the way that genuinely is spelled, and nothing between genuinely and Maria.com.
Yes.
And is that where people can get your classes? Do you work one-on-one with people, or how does that work?
I do both. So the program itself, it's a 90-day program, which you could either do in a group or you could do it privately. I do both. Both are good. And the way to communicate with me is book a free discovery call, complimentary discovery call, and I'll find out about what your goals are, what it is you're looking to achieve. And then we can take it from there and see if it's right for you.
Beautiful. Do you have any of the courses coming up soon, or do you do they cycle through every 90 days? How does that work?
No, I have one coming up probably around April 15th. I'm just looking
Okay.
over on my calendar, but
Yeah.
and I don't do them every 90 days. Sometimes I overlap them. Sometimes I leave a couple of ones. It depends. But the next one is around April 15th.
All right. So, and I will put that website right in the show notes. And I appreciate having you on the show and showing everybody your light and your incredible resilience, and you're stepping up from a place of real darkness to a place of beauty and light and service and contentment. So thank you so much for being on the show, Maria.
It was my honor and my pleasure to be here. This is great. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, that was Maria Garcia. Genuinelymaria.com. It's where you can get to her classes and to appointments to work with her. And she's gone through a lot to become the healer and wise woman that she is. So, if you would like to get off of your pharmaceuticals or out of your infirmity and go on to being a more vibrant person with your life, go and see that website. And I would like to invite you to, if you liked this video, to please click like. And if you have watched these before, and I would really appreciate if you would just gently push the subscribe button. And as always, if you or someone you know would be appropriate to be on this channel, please send them my way and we'll have a conversation. Appreciate you, and I will see you next time.